Press release that I had received stated that we had in our possession parts of a crashed flying disc. The material was found on a ranch north of Roswell.
Walter Hott was Public Information Officer of the 509th Bomb Group. He was instructed to dispatch his press release to the radio station and newspapers in Roswell. The story quickly fed the imagination of a nation where hundreds of flying discs had been reported in recent months. But the story ended abruptly when General Ramey, commander of the 8th Army Air Force, took charge and issued a new statement. It wasn't a flying disc after all.
To me, I think it was one of the slickest cover-ups by admitting that we had the material, and then a higher authority says, no, you don't.
But was it just a weather balloon that crashed here in the summer of 1947? Here in the desert outside of Roswell is where a field of strange metallic debris is said to have been found by a rancher named Mac Brazel as he inspected his grazing land. It stretched nearly 3/4 of a mile in length. He had alerted the airbase, wondering who was going to clean it up. Jesse Marcel Jr. recalls that his father, the intelligence officer at the Roswell Army Airfield, had been dispatched to the debris site to determine what had crashed there.
The night that my dad came home, he was very excited. He woke my mother and myself up and said he wanted to show us something very strange. And as I recall, he said this was parts of a flying saucer. I was 11, almost 12 at the time, and I had seen pieces of an airplane and weather balloons and things like that, but this was not like anything that I'd ever seen before. And the most intriguing portion of the debris that I recall seeing was what appeared to be I-beams. When I looked at this with the light reflecting on it, I noticed what appeared to be some symbols or writing along the inner surface of this I-beam. And the implication was this was something that came from some other planetary system.
While researching a book on the Roswell incident, author Kevin Randall would learn details about other debris Marcel had collected.
You have something called metal foil, been described by various people as like tin foil or lead foil. You wad it up into a ball, you drop it on the table, it unfolds itself and there's no sign of a crease.
Randall found others who claimed to have touched the mysterious debris almost 50 years ago.
It was all wadded up when he dropped it, and when he dropped it on the table and it hit the table, it spread out just like it was water. And so they all started holding it and playing with it, and they were trying to cut it with their knives, and they tried to burn it with their lighters, and they couldn't do any damage to it at all.
Frankie Rowe remembers that her father, the Roswell fire lieutenant, and the other firemen examined the strange metal while she was visiting the station as a 12-year-old girl.
So it made the circle of all the firemen that were standing around the table, and everybody did what they wanted to do, and it was laying there, and I reached over and I picked it up. And I sat there and played with it for a while, just wadding it up and dropping it. And when I was holding it in my hand, I couldn't feel it in my hand.
Randall discovered evidence that a thorough cleanup of the debris site took place under security so tight, even the sheriff was not allowed entry.
What we understand is you have riflemen on the high points around there facing outward. You've got men cleaning the debris field, putting the material in wheelbarrows, moving it to collection points so they can be put into trucks, brought back. Eventually, they crawled across the area, shoulder to shoulder, picking up all the little bits and pieces they could find.
Although no trace of the Roswell flying saucer can be produced to support these claims, the story expanded. There were reports of a second crash site. Frankie Rowe's father said he had seen extraterrestrial beings here.
They'd gotten a call on what they thought was a plane crash about 30 miles north of Roswell. And when they got out there, it was not an airplane. He said it was a flying saucer that had crashed. And there were little, what he called little people. And he said one of them was still alive. That there were two that were covered up laying on the ground. And he said they had been covered up, it looked like with body bags. And the one that was walking around there didn't appear to be hurt.
Through his research, Kevin Randle has established what he believes happened next.
According to a number of the eyewitnesses, the craft and the bodies were taken to Hangar 84 at the Roswell Army Airfield, where they were held for a period of time before the various flights were initiated and sent out of Roswell.
Randle believes that crates containing alien bodies and all the metallic flying saucer wreckage were loaded out of the center of the heavily guarded Hangar 84, never to be seen again.
There obviously was a cover-up of this accident, because years later my dad said he was actually part of the cover-up because he went along with the weather balloon story.
Marcel confided that he was even ordered to pose for photographers with wreckage from such a weather balloon.
The people of the town knew about it. Some of them had information, secret information, that it revolved around this.
My dad explained to my mother that this was a non-event. Don't even discuss it with your friends. Don't talk about it. I was a true Air Force brat. I believed in following the orders, He didn't want me to talk about it, so we did not talk about it.
These people were visited by military authorities. They were told to keep quiet.
Frankie Rowe recalls such a visit from a man in a uniform.
He started getting louder, and he kept saying, "Don't you understand? You did not see anything." And he had a nightstick type of thing with him that was kind of hanging on his belt. And he took that out, and he got very loud, and he started talking, and every time he would make a point, he would hit his hand with the nightstick. So he would say, "You didn't see anything, you were not there." And he said, "If you ever say one word about this the rest of your life, we will split up this family. If that's not enough," he said, "this is a big desert out here. We can take you out in the desert." And he said, "No one will ever find your bodies."
These are troubling and sincere memories from a time 50 years ago. But these stories and others like them make up the body of evidence that we have regarding the Roswell incident. There are no shreds of foil to examine, only the photograph of a man posed with debris from a weather balloon. They are central to a myth that began in 1947 about flying saucers in the sky. Soon the Air Force would begin a series of secret investigations or projects aimed at discovering what mysteries might lie behind the UFO reports. The first was codenamed Project Sign.
Project Sign wrote a final report called The Estimate of the Situation, which concluded that UFOs were interplanetary vehicles. You can imagine that this didn't go over well at the Pentagon. If Roswell was really a crashed alien spacecraft, the government military could not have the idea of UFOs as interplanetary spacecraft coming out when they've been trying to cover up the Roswell crash.
By December of 1948, Project Sign was renamed Project Grudge. The Air Force hired astronomer J. Allen Hynek of Ohio State University to weed out reports that were caused by meteors, planets, stars, or comets. Some of the reports, like this lenticular cloud formation, were easily explained as atmospheric anomalies. This 1951 photograph of objects traveling in a V shape over Texas became known as the Lubbock Lights. Analysis proved these to be birds reflecting light.